All right, my friends. Welcome to today's episode of the Art of Online Business podcast. Rick Mulready here. I want to talk to you about values today. And yeah, I know it's kind of unfortunately become, a super buzzword in the online space over the past couple of years. And it's really unfortunate because they are the foundation of your online business. Just in January of 2023, I celebrated 9 years of having my online business and working through my values, not the process of coming up with them, but putting some of my values into action. And I'll explain more as I get deeper into this episode here, but putting some of my values into action has been one of the hardest things I've experienced in running my business in 9 years. And like I said, I'll explain more as we get deeper into this. And so when you're clear on your values and when you're living through your values and making decisions through your values and all that stuff, it can completely drive your online business success. And not only the success, from a revenue standpoint, all that stuff, and even more importantly, your happiness in how you're operating your business. So let's just start with a little background. Why are values important? I think we know the answer to that. It's the foundation for decision making that we do both in our personal life and in our business, and they guide how we show up and interact with people, interact with the world. As a business owner, our values allow us to, among other things, differentiate ourselves from other people in the space. And by clearly communicating the values that your online business stands for, you can attract customers who share those values and build, a loyal following in the process. And that was something I didn't understand early on, oddly enough. And one of the big mistakes that I made with my values early on, because, again, we always hear like, well, we need to have values. We need to make sure that we have clear values for our business. Well, one of the mistakes that I made was that I looked at it through the lens of, okay, I need to create values for how we outwardly show up in the business or from the business, I should say, rather than these are our brand values. And it starts with how we operate as a team, as a business, and then go outward. And again, I'll dive more into that as we go. But, I had one word answers to values. It was like, all right, integrity, communication. I'm just making this like blah, blah, blah. That was it. Like, all right, here's my 5 values. And it was just a word. And that's a huge mistake. And I'll explain more why here in just a second. So if you don't have values clearly being able to clearly articulate your values, I want to invite you to explore your personal values, the values of your clients, your ideal people that you want to work with, and then how they intersect. What's the overlap there? And so again, if you don't have values, if you're not clear on what those values are, I want to give you an exercise to find those values. And by the way, the credit for this exercise goes to Erica Corday, who is the amazing DEI coach and consultant that I've had the privilege of working with. We did extensive work on values throughout 2021. And so, by the way, if you're looking for, work in the DEI space, there's no one better than Erica Corday. ericacorday.com. I'll link up Erica's website in the show notes for today's episode, ERICACOURDAE. Erica Corday. Like I said, we did extensive work on, my brand values throughout 2021. And so the first thing in this exercise is take like 30 minutes, however long. This is not like, okay, I'm going to jot down for 10 minutes and I'm good. Take as much time as you need and just brain dump all the values that you feel are important to you. And this is one of those things where it's like, it sounds easy to do, but like when I did this, I was like, oh man, it took me a while to kind of get into it. So brain dump all the values that are important to you. And then once you're done that, move over to what are all the values that you feel are important to your quote unquote ideal people that you want to serve. So you're going to be brain dumping and listing out all the values that you feel are important to you, and then a separate list of all the values that you feel are important to the people that you want to serve. And then what you want to do is look at both of those lists and essentially highlight which values exist on both lists. Like, so there's the intersection, like where are the intersection pieces? And you may have a ton of values that overlap, right? And that was something that happened with me. I just had a ton of values that were important to me and I felt were important to the ideal people that I want to serve. And so here comes the hard part, right? What I want you to do is whittle those values down to the ones that are most important to you. 3 to 5, like 5 tops. You know, one thing I see a lot of people like, I have 10 values. I'm like, all right, can you list them all out? And they're like, no. That's too many. That's the hard part, is you got to whittle this down to what are the most important values to you and to your people that you want to serve. And then these 3 to 5 values are what become your brand values. But again, remember, it needs to be more than just a word. There needs to be context included as to what the actual value means in action. And again, this is a mistake that I made early on where I said, okay, my number 1 value is integrity. My number 2 value is this. My number 3 value is this. And it was just a list. Well, integrity can mean 18 things to 18 different people. We need to be clear on what the value means to us from a personal level and from a brand. And then what does that look like in action? And so I'm going to share with you I have 5 values. I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to read what each of these means. Okay. So number 1 is integrity, right? And that's a buzzword. You know, a lot of people say, well, integrity is like, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. Okay, great. But like, what does that actually mean? And so in our team, in our business, integrity, as we like to say, is a culture. It's not just a set of actions. It's how we operate. And so we use our core values as a lens for our actions, not the other way around, right? And so sometimes that means following through on a promise. Like, again, we say, we said we're going to do something, we do it, yes. And sometimes it means changing our actions based on integrity. You know, another thing we like to say is we actively seek to stay in alignment with our values, i.e. integrity, and we hold ourselves accountable in the process. And so that's just sort of like the higher overarching what integrity means to us. In our marketing, integrity means that profit is not the only lens through which we make marketing decisions. So for example, we don't lie or manipulate people in order to make a sale. We strive to present our programs, our promises, our experiences, et cetera, as they are, not as we think our audience wants them to be. And we're willing to sacrifice sales, i.e. revenue and profit. We're willing to sacrifice sales in order to advertise, to work and coach in alignment with our values. What that means is if I get a lot of applicants for Accelerator and some of them just they don't align with my values. And so I will decline. I have the opportunity to decline that application for that reason. It makes it really, really easy. And so integrity doesn't mean that we eliminate the wrongdoing. It means that we authentically and openly strive to know better and do better when, again, not if, like this is going to happen when we get it wrong. And we act in integrity and alignment with the people that we promote, meaning whether it's an affiliate or whether I'm sending business somewhere to, whatever, an ads manager or a tool or what have you. I'll talk more about that coming up, that we associate with, that we support, and that we sell to. And when we learn that a peer or a student has practices or values that cause harm in any way, that relationship is ended regardless of the financial or social consequences that may result from that. That's how important that is to me. Now notice that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 short paragraphs of what integrity means to myself and the business. And by the way, and again, I'll talk more about this coming up, but like when we learn that, a peer or a student, as I just mentioned, has practices or values that cause harm, we get to make the decision do we want to have a conversation with that person? And it's a simple yes or no. And this is part of why it's been so hard for me over the past few years, because I've had to make a lot of those decisions. Like, do I care to have that conversation? Because there were things that came up that because I wasn't putting value, this sounds really weird, but I wasn't putting everything I'm doing in the business through the lens of my values. And so I wasn't seeing those things. And as soon as I started putting everything through the lens of my values, then I started seeing things and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And that's where the decision comes up. Like, all right, do I want to have this conversation or do I not want to have this conversation? Is it worth it to me to have this conversation? Is the relationship worth it to me to have this conversation? And it's, yes or no. And so same thing for you. Like if integrity is important and is a value, like this is where you get to decide as well. And it makes it even harder when there is a financial consequence for you, whether, all right, you know what, this student, for example, is not exhibiting the values that align with you, and, they're paying whatever monthly. That could hurt, right? Because it's a financial repercussion of standing up and saying, you know what, this is not aligned with my values and it's not okay with me. So anyway, that's integrity. So that's the first value. Notice that's a hell of a lot more than just listing out the word integrity. The second value that we live by is advocacy. And so let me just explain what that means. And by the way, and I'll talk more about this, is like when you have these values, you're always reminding your team, you're always bringing these things up with your team so that it's a constant you're keeping at the forefront of your team. So from an advocacy perspective, we believe in using our brand, our resources, and privilege to support, advocate for, and protect people with all different life experiences, especially those from underrepresented and marginalized groups. So that's sort of the overarching what advocacy means for me and the business. And then building a safe, healthy, and inclusive community is a priority for our brand, which means we must exclude individuals that threaten safety, that threaten health or inclusion. And we won't allow racist, sexist, ableist, homophobic, fatphobic, transphobic, or any other phobic people into our programs, on our podcast, or to work with us in any other form. We won't collaborate with brands and individuals that do not value the lives of underrepresented and marginalized groups. And value alignment is non-negotiable in this area. And we will use our access, our resources, my platforms to welcome and lift up those from traditionally underrepresented and marginalized groups. And we will set the stage and the microphone in my case, but it will be their voice that gets amplified, not ours. And we also make consistent, financial contributions to causes that align with our core values. So whenever somebody joins Accelerator, for example, we make a donation to one of the causes. And I list those out on the Accelerator page, like some of the groups that we advocate for, like, for example, the Trevor Project. We've made lots of donations, or the Kula Project. So anyway, this is one of those things where you might be hearing this right now and you're like, wow, I don't like this, Rick. It doesn't align with me. And that's okay. And that's why I'm sharing all this with you, because I want to encourage you to be super clear on your values. And when you are, you're going to attract the people that align with your values and basically repel the people that aren't in alignment. And that's okay, right? It's something personal. It's just you get to make that decision because this is your business, right? All right. So the third value is vulnerability for us. And basically, we're comfortable with being uncomfortable. We're willing to take radical actions, even knowing the consequences, to create the changes that we would like to see in the world. And this one really goes back to the first two of advocacy and integrity. We do fully understand this is hard work, but change takes time. I'm somebody that like, all right, I want this now, right? Like changing something that you don't feel is right is not going to happen overnight. And this was something, just for example, that, Erica Corday had to constantly remind me, like, this takes time, and just keep moving forward. And we're committed to the long game so that we adjust, adapt, and move on, and we'll do so publicly if necessary. This is one example of, I'm sharing very in-depth here about values and, how to come up with them for your business. And I'm going to share with you 10 examples of how values can be showing up in your business in just a few minutes. We don't shy away from opportunities to admit and amend for wrongdoing. A couple of years ago, a lot of people, rightfully so, after the terrible George Floyd tragedy, they said, Rick, why aren't you commenting? Why weren't you commenting on that? And they were completely right. And they said, we haven't heard from you on this. So like, we don't even know where you stand on any of this based on your values. And like, I came out here on the podcast, like, you're absolutely right. And so we welcome the opportunity to lead by example and show what's possible with our business, while supporting what we feel is right, even when, and this is the hard part, even when this goes against traditional practice or culture within the online marketing space. This is the piece right here that has been the hardest thing, because what I've found is that even when, there's stuff going on in the online space or whatever it might be that we know is not right. You know what I mean? There's going to be people who still, regardless of how they feel about that value, it's like they're a fan of whatever company or person or what have you. And what I see is, so they sort of kind of like, all right, you know what? It's okay. And so this is the hard part. And this is like, this stuff takes work. And so, we believe that, again, we meaning my brand, my business, myself, that when, if we feel like we know better, then like, we're like, ooh, something's not right here. We try and do better. And we provide space to be able to make mistakes on the team, in our programs. And we also facilitate conversations that without, working around the work that needs to be done. And our goal always is to create a safe space that encourages change and growth, while not working with people who jeopardize the safety of that community, of our community. And so that's the third one. That's vulnerability, right? As you can see here, this is deep stuff, and it's super important. And that's why it's not like, oh, I'm just going to bang this out in the next hour or so, right? Like I worked on this for months, and then it's like, all right, coming up with what these are like, and then it's putting them into action. All right. And the fourth of my 5 values is kindness. We lead with kindness. We lead with love and care in everything that we do. Even in challenging or stressful situations, we'll work hard to treat each other with dignity and respect. We focus on solving problems, not assigning blame. And we actively work to understand somebody else's experience and perspective, and to help everyone get what they need in the way that they receive or need it. And we make people-based decisions, not only profit-based decisions like we talked about earlier. And we work to foster an environment that's fun, that's encouraging, uplifting for anyone who interacts with our brand. And we also believe that respect from our students is something that is not a given, that it's earned. And we all are always trying to do the work necessary to earn that trust from you. And then lastly, collaboration. And for me, that is, we're creative problem solvers. We believe that there's no one right solution or one like end all be all person We approach new problems or projects with creativity and initiative. We believe that everyone on the team has something to offer and has a voice worth hearing. We're resourceful, willing to make suggestions, seek out new ideas, present new ideas. We sort of leave our egos at the door, and we create a collaborative process where everybody is heard, but at the same time, not every idea is going to be implemented. And the goal here, overarching, is to create a brand and a business that aligns with our values and our vision. And we all work collectively, on my team to that end. So notice I just went on for, I don't know how long that, a good 15 minutes or so. Those are the values. Those is pretty in depth, right? And the reason that they're in depth is there's no gray area for each one of those. And so the idea there too is you want it front and center. You want those brand values front and center. If you go to my website, which is a brand new website, by the way, rickmulready.com, right on the homepage, when you scroll down, it lists all those values right then and there. Or the page that talks about my coaching. If you go to my accelerator page, rickmulready.com/accelerator, values are right there. They're meant to be a filter. Again, if somebody comes to the site, somebody comes to the page, somebody listens to this episode and they're like, Rick, you are off your rocker. That's okay. That's all right. But it's also really hard to say that because we want, it's like, wait, we're building a business. We can't turn away anything that comes our way. The real freedom from our business comes when we're comfortable doing that. They're meant to be a filter. And so now, once you have your values, you've done the exercise, you fleshed them out, et cetera, a great place to start with those values is asking yourself, what will or won't your brand do as a result of being aligned with those values? And so this is where I've put together a list of 10 ways that values can impact your business. Now, not by any means, this is not an all-encompassing list, but this is meant to get you thinking about ways of incorporating your values throughout your business. And I'll tell you up front right now, some of this is not going to be popular. I'll tell you this right now. I'm also going to start off with the easier stuff and work towards the harder stuff. And also when I say easier, it's also sort of the obvious things, hopefully. So number one, that values should be impacting your business is decision-making. It's very easy to make a decision when you have such clarity in your values. You're like, does this align with my values? Does it not? Right? So it's like, all right, it does align. Then you start to explore further in whatever the opportunity is. Does it not? If it doesn't align with your values, boom, you just delete that. All right, move it to the side, keep going forward. So through your decision making, every decision in your business, I feel it should be made through the lens of your values. Okay. Also, number two, how you spend your time through the lens of your values. Is this whatever I'm planning in my schedule? Is this through the lens of my values? Maybe one of your values is, I forget that I'm blanking on the word, but I want to have I want free time to do whatever it is that I want is a value. Okay, cool. Well, obviously, if you are stacking your calendar from morning till night, every single day of the week with stuff, that's out of alignment with your values. That's just a super easy example, but how you spending your time through the lens of your values, again, you get to make that easy decision. Then, and everybody knows this one, everybody goes to this one too, and super important with your team, right? So through the lens of your values impacting your business in terms of team. So several different ways. Culture, right? By clearly communicating your business's values to your team, you're helping create a sense of purpose and meaning for the people that work in your team, which can lead to a whole lot of other things like greater job satisfaction, higher levels of engagement. They're part of something bigger than themselves, et cetera. So using values to create culture in your business. Hiring is another one. Pretty straightforward, hopefully, on this one. Like, you're hiring people that align with your values. You're not hiring people that don't align with your values. Pretty straightforward. Praising your team. So if you've got weekly team meetings, for example, especially when your entire team, if you bring your entire team onto, a team call every week and you're praising somebody, it's really powerful when you back that praise up with whatever value or values that they're exhibiting to get that praise from you. Because that way they're making connections. So, I did super well in whatever it might be, and that aligned with, our third value or our first value of integrity or whatever it might be. And then others on your team are also seeing that and saying, they're connecting. That person is living through our values and they're getting public accolades here in front of everybody. Okay. They start to make connections, right? So praising your team through the lens of your values. On the flip side, team performance. So if you have to put people on performance plans, or if you have to let people go, for example, it makes it very clear when, the performance plan is through the lens of values. Like, all right, we're not exhibiting, said value in whatever's going on, right? So not only for praise, but on the flip side of that, when there are performance issues, it makes it so much easier to link it back to your values. And so they're like, oh yeah, I see that, right? And then also for letting people go as well. And so if somebody's continuously not exhibiting the values of the business, pretty straightforward that it's not a good fit. Another way that values can impact your business is through your offers or your offer. Does your offer or your offers align with your values? Is what you're including in your offer within the boundaries that are most important to you in your life? And so it's another thing that a lot of people don't think about in terms of creating creating offers. But, does your offer or your offers correlate to your values? Okay. All right. For the final four, did I have 5? No. Oh, from the team, I had several in there. So, all right. So the next one, this is where we shift into the harder stuff. Okay. And so another way that your values are going to impact your business from my point of view is your relationships with vendors, with other businesses, with tools, what have you. And if you find that, or if you feel like, whatever tool doesn't align with your values, or another business that you are either currently working with or want to work with, or what have you, doesn't align with your values, this is where you've got to make a hard decision. And it really should be an easy decision. But I'll tell you from experience, it's hard because you might have had a relationship with someone or something for a long time. And then, then there's the values lens shows up and you're sifting through, you're putting everything through the lens of your values. It's hard if you are cutting ties, if you're like, what, this does not feel good to me anymore. And it might not be a popular decision of what you're doing. And you're not coming out and saying like, I am, cutting this because of whatever, I don't think so, because I feel like that's very performative. And you don't have to make a big deal of it, but like, this is where it gets harder, because you might have been in a relationship with a vendor or another business or another person, what have you, and it was super beneficial to you or your business or is or whatever. And so that's where the real hard decision comes up. And again, I feel it should be easy, but I will tell you from experience that it's not, because you're like, wait, if I don't continue this can affect my bottom line. Going back to the values that I talked about earlier, it's not just about profit. It's not just about revenue. It's people first and the values first, and being able to make that decision. I will tell you that this is way harder to do when you're earlier in your business, because then we're always thinking like, oh man, if I don't do this, then I'm not going to it's going to really affect my revenue. I won't be able to make that revenue back up. I'll tell you this right now. That's not true, but in the moment, it's super hard. The further along you are in your business and, the more success that you've had, it becomes easier, but at the same time, it's still challenging, right? So again, values, relationships with the vendors, other businesses, other people. Another one, podcast guests. If you have a podcast or if you got a YouTube channel or what have you, and people are pitching you to be on your platform. All right. The first filter that we look at, aside from, all the terrible pitches with a P that we get, is like, all right, do they align with values? Do they align with our values? And that's a really boom, nope. Okay. No, that one doesn't even get entertained. Right. And it's like, oh yeah, they do. Okay, cool. And then you start to, again, it's like a simple yes or no. And that filter, that lens allows us to explore deeper after the, if it's a yes, all right, cool, align with the values. And by the way, if you run if you've got a podcast or a YouTube channel where people are reaching out and they're emailing you and everything looks good on paper, or if you've got a coaching program or whatever, and people apply to work with you, or, or people are maybe not applying, but they're signing up for a call with you, like a sales call, for example, everything could look good on paper, but you or your team need to have a process in place for how you do that more in-depth research. Go to their Instagram page, go to their website, dig into it. Where I had somebody recently where they applied for Accelerator and it was straight up not a good values fit because of the research that we did from the application. Everything looked good on paper, but then when we dug into it, we're like, no, it's just not a good fit. And so podcast guests. All right. Now, so the next one is being on other podcasts or deciding not to be. And I think that this is a really hard one, because if you want to be on, let's just say somebody who has a huge podcast invites you to be a guest on the show, right? And you think that there's a values alignment. Awesome. Here's the hard part. And this is what I think that you should do, but obviously do whatever you feel is best for you, is look at other guests that person is inviting onto their show, and do those people, those people that are coming onto that show, do their values align? Because if you're like, oh yeah, I think there's a values alignment with the host, but you're like, oh, all these other guests over here, definitely out of alignment with, values for me specifically. And you're like, oh, well, screw it. It's a great show for me to be on for the business. You are going to get grouped into, whether we want it or not, all the other guests, right? And so there's a conflict there of values. And this is one of those things, my friend, it's really hard to do. But, this is something that I really encourage. If values are important to you and you want to be living your values through the business and leveraging your values to make decisions in your business, this is one of those things. When you're being a guest on other shows, it's not just the host, it's other people that they've had on the podcast. And again, this is not an easy thing, because it could be amazing for you, right? And that's where the decision comes up. Likewise, with the next thing, and this is the last example I'll give you. Again, this is not all encompassing. There's a whole bunch of other opportunities to be looking at through the lens of values, but affiliate partnerships, right? So similar to relationships with a vendor or a business or a person or what have you, you're not promoting somebody that doesn't align with your values. Now, that's pretty straightforward, right? But here's the thing. If there is somebody who you feel like is saying all the right things, you're like, yeah, I align with those values, but then they're doing affiliate partnerships for other people or other businesses or vendors or what have you, and those other people, other business, other vendors, like their values do not align. Like, it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? That is like, we're talking depth here of what we're looking at. And again, this is the hard part of being willing to go into these depths of looking at the values beyond just, oh, this person is asking me to be an affiliate for them. Is their values alignment? Or I'm looking for an affiliate partnership, like partner, like, all right, this person would be great, but, out of values alignment. Okay, cool. But now it's, wait a minute, this is somebody or something or a business or a vendor or whatever that I look up to, but then they're promoting somebody else or another business or what have you. And like, there is complete values misalignment there with what's important to you. For me personally, big red flag. And so it's kind of like saying one thing and doing another, right? And so again, this is where we get really deep into values, and it does get harder to be making decisions in your business through the lens of your value. But I will tell you this, and I tell you this from experience over all the work I've done with this over the past several years, is you become so much freer in your business when you're making decisions through this lens, through the lens of your values. And again, it's not always easy, but for me personally, I think it's the right thing to do. And again, a lot of you, if you've made it this far in the episode, you might be like, Rick, I completely disagree with you. You're saying all this stuff. Like, no, like I can't even see. That's okay. That's okay. In fact, I'd love to get your thoughts. If you want to shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram at Rick Mulready on Instagram, or shoot me an email, rick@rickmulready.com. But, this is one of the things that I work with our accelerator members on when, they're not already doing it, because I feel so strongly that, and you don't have to go, have all the depth of the 5, or maybe you have 3 and you're like, these are the 3 that are most important. Amazing. Awesome. Like, live through those values, whatever those 3 are. And you just create so much freedom for yourself in the business. And yes, you will attract a whole lot more of the people that align with you. And now you're working with people that align with your values. And you're like, all right, I'm so much happier in what I'm doing. And there you go. As a result, the revenue's coming in. So it just kind of comes full circle. So thank you for listening to this. Appreciate it. I've been wanting to do this episode for a while, and here you go. And again, if you've got comments, you've got, anything you want to chat through or questions or what have you, or, you want to apply to coach with me on your business, what we help you do inside of our accelerator coaching program is help you grow and scale your business through the lens of your values while working a whole lot less, right? So many people want to come, so many people who come to work with me, they're like, yeah, the business is going really well, but I am working way too much. Okay, amazing. Let's fix that. That's what I help you do. So it's application only. Go to rickmulready.com/accelerator. If you want to shoot me an email, rick@rickmulready.com. Thank you, my friend, for listening to today's episode. Appreciate you. Until next time, be well. I'll chat with you soon.